hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here and sorry for the delay. I am still going to do a 40-minute talk, so sorry about that. My name is Dasha Ilina. I am an artist. First, I wanted to say thank you to Marie for the invitation, and thank you to the whole KIKK team for making sure that things work. So thanks to the technical team also. And today I wanted to present this talk titled Jordan B. Peterson Thought a Bollywood Film Was AI Generated. And even though this might lose me some of the public, I will still reveal the mystery behind the title at the very beginning of the talk. So as the theme of this year's KIKK Festival is true or false, so of course the idea here is to talk about artificial intelligence and how algorithmically generated content is making it much harder to distinguish fiction from reality. I wanted to show you my favorite example of a public figure making a fool of themselves in this manner. So the famous men's influencer and an all-around douchebag, Jordan B. Peterson, recently saw this tweet which described a clip from a Bollywood film as if it was AI generated. So spoiler alert, it is a real clip from a real Bollywood film, albeit, low resolution. And so he kind of believed this gag and said, "Stunning, goodbye Hollywood, it's been nice knowing you." Needless to say, this tweet has since been deleted. But this brings me to an interesting topic which has been discussed a lot recently in the critical tech community, of which I consider myself to be part of, which is that AI content is now often identified as looking unbelievable, generic, or just a little bit off. So this article from John Herman claims just that. And he highlights in this article how AI functions as an insult now. So by asking, is this image AI, or is it just sort of ugly? Is my student's essay AI generated, or is it just low effort and full of cliches? And there's a similar article from The Atlantic that also says that at a time when AI is capable of more than ever, saying, "Did a chatbot write this?" is not a compliment. And I mean, how often do you look at a post online that looks a little bit weird and wonder if it was generated by AI, or maybe watch an episode of a TV show that seems poorly written and wonder if ChatGPT did some of the work? And what I'm getting at here is that, of course, because of artificial intelligence, it is now harder to distinguish fiction from reality, but maybe not necessarily because AI is producing such sophisticated content, but rather because it's kind of hard to distinguish what is AI's best with the human's laziest version of something. And even though this content might seem wrong or unbelievable to us, a tech-savvy group of people, I'm going to assume majority millennials, who have always learned to look at the fingers in order to identify AI-generated imagery, this doesn't mean that that's the case for an older and mostly right-wing group of people who are happy to think that this clearly AI-generated image of Donald Trump personally wafting through the waters during the recent hurricane in the US is getting deleted off of Facebook because they, whoever they are, don't want to see it, and not because Facebook for once is doing something about the masses of disinformation that are being spread on their website. And although this will be an unpopular opinion at this conference, I am here to urge you to actually stop using AI altogether. And I will illustrate why through my artistic practice, but there is one reason that I've actually never covered with my work, but it is really important for me to mention, which is, of course, the environmental damage that is caused by computational practices, and of course is much more intensified with AI. And trust me, I don't want to be the buzzkill here, but I find this information to be so shocking that I actually don't quite understand why so few people around me seem to care. And I think my job here is actually pretty simple because we all already know this, right? Data centers emissions are going through the roof because of AI, just as the consumption of water related to computational practices are making a devastating dent in places where there are data centers. And even Sam Altman is publicly admitting that an energy breakthrough is necessary for the future of artificial intelligence, which has been consuming vastly more energy and water than anyone had predicted. And just as Microsoft is restarting a nuclear power plant, which has been closed recently because, or not recently, it was closed a while ago, because of the worst nuclear accident in the US. And when I asked an American friend to tell me more about it, because I actually never really heard about it, she called it the American Chernobyl. But like I said, I don't want to be a total buzzkill, so before I scare everyone away, I will talk about my work and stop complaining about AI. But if you are okay with the planet burning at the never-before-seen pace because you'd rather have ChatGPT write your emails, then maybe there's not much more I can do here. So I wanted to start the presentation by one pretty early project called Are You Watching from 2016. But what's funny is that I've always been against AI. I'm sure that's been made pretty clear now from my introduction. And I always thought that my artistic practice had nothing to do with it. But I think as we're all kind of collectively learning more and more about what artificial intelligence is, the kind of different hidden processes behind artificial intelligence that are needed to make it work, the more I'm starting to realize that actually my work has been critiquing all of these different various processes without knowing what they are for or what they were going to lead to in the future. So this early work of mine was very simple to create. As you can maybe guess from this one shot, it's a video. I will show the video later. This work is a collage of surveillance camera footage, which features a performer that is spelling out the title of the project to the surveillance cameras. And in order to create this video, I actually did something as simple as just looking up Moscow live webcam and just clicking on the first website that showed up and then being shocked at the amount of unprotected real-time video footage that was available to me. And the reason why I chose Moscow is because that's where I'm from originally, but at the time I was already living in France. And so originally this project was a way for me to connect with my friend who is still living in Russia. But then it kind of became something more sinister and bizarre as we started looking through this list of cameras, of which there were many, and some of them pointed to pedestrian streets, which made us wonder, okay, what is the purpose of these cameras? Is anyone actually watching? And maybe more importantly, do they need to? And whether actively watched or not, the constant potential for an outsider gaze leaves this kind of eerie awareness that we've become unavoidably surveilled, right? And so the very last project that I will show today will actually give insight into why and to whom this surveillance footage can be relevant, and will also prove that actually it no longer needs a human gaze, which has been replaced by a machine one. So the next project is called www.sendmeatask.com. And before I continue, I just wanted to quickly introduce the Amazon Mechanical Turk in case some of you are not familiar with it. And so I found this description on Wikipedia, which I think is actually quite nice. It says that Amazon Mechanical Turk is a crowdsourcing website for businesses to hire remotely located crowd workers to perform discrete on-demand tasks that computers are currently unable to do. And so the project is actually an online service that I built together with American artist and curator Amanda Lewis. And the presentation of this project takes the shape of a performance in which we have to fulfill algorithmic tasks that emulate the demanding workflow that gig economy workers are subjected to every day. And so our project started with this article titled My Brief and Curious Life as a Mechanical Turk. So at the time, we didn't really know anything about the service. And I think back in 2017, actually, a lot of people didn't. But we were curious. We wanted to know more. So we started reading the article. And what we found out was that the tasks were not complex, but really poorly paid. So people who try to make an actual living from this kind of work lead quite an intense and stressful everyday life. So some jobs pay 2 to 3 American cents in order to complete, let's say, a transcription of an audio or choose the best category for an image. But others pay a lot more. There are tasks that pay 50 cents or even a couple of dollars. So when the opportunity to get paid more money presents itself, obviously it becomes very interesting to a lot of people. And because of that, there's a lot of different plugins and installs that you can, browser extensions that you can install in your browser that have appeared specifically as a way to notify the taskers that a task that they might be interested in has appeared. So what happens is basically people start waking up in the middle of the night. They start leaving family dinners in order to complete tasks. because if you try to do this work as a main source of income, or even sometimes a sole source of income, then you kind of have to do as many tasks as possible. So of course, this ends up being super stressful, both for the actual workers, but also for their families who have to kind of keep up with their lifestyle. And this particular image I find really funny because not only does it give the impression that money is coming straight from the computer, but it also says in point number 3 that you could get paid for doing good work. And then the first kind of circle also says that you can find an interesting task, which if you guys are familiar with the service, one might argue is not actually possible. So when we found out about this lifestyle, we wanted to make it visible, and so in order to do so, we decided to emulate it in the performance that we were doing, during which we asked visitors to submit us algorithmic tasks, and or regular tasks, but through the means of a website that we performed as soon as we saw the changes on the screen, so we were kind of running around trying to complete the tasks. And so this next project is so far the one that I've spent the most time working on. And recently somebody called it my magnum opus. So I'm embracing that description and saying, behold my magnum opus, Center for Technological Pain. So in my work, I've always been interested in the way that technology affects us humans, right? But with this project, I focus specifically on how it affects our bodies. So the different kind of pains that we can get from our devices, from using them too much. So, I don't know, back pain like this guy, or your eyes start hurting, these kinds of things. And big tech is obviously becoming aware that people are kind of waking up to these problems, right? So they decided to create various solutions to the health problems that are caused by our devices. One of them is this website from Google called Digital Wellbeing, which is a sort of a quiz that asks you questions about your digital lifestyle and then proposes some solutions. So one example of this is a question that says, do you tend to lose the sense of time while you're on your phone? And the options are never, sometimes, often, and all the time. And at the end of the quiz, the site proposes you some tips to kind of lead you onto the path of digital well-being, which in the end is nothing more than an advertisement for Google phones. And even if I think that the effort is admirable, this is actually far from being my favorite solution from Google to kind of, let's say health problems from our devices. So I hope that you all remember this object, and for those of you that have never seen it, I will remind you. So this is my favorite device to have ever come from Google. It's called Google Glass. In addition to being ugly, it didn't have a very clear purpose. It was incredibly expensive, and it also had a lot of issues around privacy. But essentially, it's a pair of glasses that allows you to take images, take photos of things that are in front of you, instantly share them online, and also to look up things on the internet. But of course, we can't focus just on Google here. There are lots of other companies that have now done this since Google did. Snapchat has already made this kind of pair of glasses a while ago. I have only ever seen one person wear them, so maybe this is kind of reflecting their success. And Meta is now, of course, working on their own version together with Ray-Ban. But the problem that I have with all of these glasses is that all of these companies are proposing to us a future where we will all just be wearing glasses all the time, right? This is how these things are kind of working. So we all have to look like Mark Zuckerberg in the future. But regardless of that fact, I am actually very curious to see what happens with these glasses, especially the Meta ones. I think so far they're kind of the most promising prototype, because actually a group of Harvard students has already found a way to hack them in order to dox people around them. So they basically used a facial recognition service called PimEyes. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, and some other tools to automatically go from face to name to phone number to home address and to much more information about a complete stranger. So in the video, which you can see at this article, they actually just come up to people and they say, oh, Anne, oh my God, it's been years. And of course, when you have someone coming up to you, knowing all of this information about you, you're kind of thinking that they know you. And so I find it pretty ironic that it's Harvard students that are messing up Zuckerberg's plans, but at least they were nice enough not to share the code publicly because they said it was too dangerous. But back to Google Glass, I just wanted to mention that it's not the failure of Google Glass that was interesting to me, but it was actually the way that it was first presented. So I don't know if some of you have seen this TED Talk from 2013. I'm assuming most of you haven't. But this is, yeah, I'm just going to show you a clip of Sergey Brin presenting this new device.
This position that you just saw me in, looking down my phone, that's one of the reasons behind this project, Project Glass, because we ultimately question whether this is, the ultimate future of how you want to connect to other people in your life, how do you want to connect to information. Should it be by just walking around, looking down? But that was the vision behind Glass, and that's why we've created this form factor. Okay, and I don't want to go through all the things it does and whatnot, but I want to tell you a little bit more about the motivation behind what led to it. In addition to potentially socially isolating yourself when you're out and about looking at your phone, it's kind of, is this what you're meant to do with your body? You're standing around there and you're just like rubbing this featureless piece of glass, you're just kind of moving around.
So Brin says here that using a smartphone can be potentially socially isolating. And he's definitely right about that, right? But it was crazy for me to watch the co-founder of Google say that publicly about smartphones when they release phones themselves. And of course, I'm sure we can all agree that's not the main income or source of income for them, but still, it was pretty crazy to see Brin basically say that phones are poorly designed. And because in this very strange way, I actually agreed with him about not wanting to spend my whole life crouching over my phone, I started this project called Center for Technological Pain, which is a mock company in which I create DIY solutions to health problems that come from technology, so things like smartphones and laptops. And as a surprise to no one, the very first prototype that I built was a pair of glasses. I actually didn't realize this at the time, that I programmed to open and close automatically in order to kind of force the user to take a break every couple of minutes from the screen. So you can kind of easily see the inspiration from Sergey Brin here. Here's another example, which is a headset that is meant to reduce eye dryness, which can develop from staring at the screen for too long. So I actually really enjoyed this quick fabrication process. So every object took me at most one afternoon. And I was only using things that I could either find around the house or in the art school where I was. So I just kept going. I kept making prototypes, making a total of 11 of them, which you can see all of them on the website of the project, centerfortechpain.com. And in addition to the objects, I also propose self-defense moves against technology, which are a set of tactics of resistance against our own digital aids based on real self-defense moves that I actually just stole off of YouTube tutorials. And I also propose a yoga for healthy phone use routine, which is at once a relaxation tool, so a way to meditate while keeping up with notifications from your friends, and also a way to ridicule our obsessive media consumption by inserting our phones into the most solitary activity. And last but definitely not least, I also propose workshops with this project in order to engage the participants in a critical conversation around the negative effects of technology on the body through making. And of course, at the end of the day, it's also an art project, so I also exhibit it. This was during the Computer Girls installation in Mu Art Space in Eindhoven. And so this next project is called Advice Well Taken. I worked on it last year during my European Media Art Platform EMAP residency at Impact. And with this project, I became interested in the folklore that exists around technology. So I've been calling this kind of knowledge tech lore. I think it's pretty clear how I came up with that title. But so tech lore is information about how to use, fix, or hack technology that is spread in an informal way. So this can be done in person through conversations or also can happen online. And even after seeing this definition, you might still wonder what exactly I mean. And in the context of this festival and the theme of AI, I think that this graph actually presents it pretty well. So it's stories that come from not being able to understand how technology works or how it has led to certain consequences. And so, of course, with AI, there is lots of tech lore because nobody really understands how it works. And we're being constantly sold this kind of promise of it being perfect, of it it being impossible to make mistakes with AI, unlike us humans who are constantly messing up, which is exactly what this graph shows us, right? So we take untrustworthy data because, of course, any data produced by humans will always be biased. We put it in a system we don't fully understand, and we come out with infallible results. And working on this project, I was inspired by the Whole Earth catalog. So in case some of you are not familiar with it, it was primarily published in the 60s. It came out of the kind of hippie DIY culture in the US. But what really interested me about the catalog is that it's very often considered to be the early precursor of the internet because of the way that it was sharing and spreading information. And so at some point I asked myself what a catalog like that would look like today. So what kind of information would we be sharing today? And that's when I had the thought that the kind of folkloric stories that we used to share back in the day to make sense of natural occurrences that we didn't understand. So for example, it's raining, we don't really know why, we don't want it to rain, so I guess the gods are unhappy with us. Now we kind of understand why it starts raining. So the things that we don't understand is technology. So now we have all sorts of folklore that we share around technology in order to gain some kind of agency over it. And I think that all of us have friends or people in our lives that kind of often share their comprehensions or miscomprehensions of certain tools that don't necessarily make sense to us or that we don't want to believe. And sometimes that person in your life is Cher, who thinks her iPad is haunted and has a life of its own. But in my personal life, that person is Sophia, who I've known for 12 years now. And over the last 12 years, she has shared a lot of tech lore with me. And especially since I started working with technology, now I've become her tech support on call. So of course, when I started this project, she was the first person that I interviewed. So here's a story that I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with.
The first one that would come to mind would be the idea of covering your computer camera screen so that like people can't watch you through your camera. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be the first thing that I think of when I think of sort of tech mythology. Like it's like a boogeyman story almost, you know what I mean? Like, oh, cover up your camera or the perverts will get you.
And of course, this is a clear example of living in the age of surveillance capitalism. And it's always really hard to distinguish what should be simply dismissed as paranoia and what should be seriously considered. And the more that I've worked on this project, and actually the more that I use technology, I'm starting to think that maybe nothing should be dismissed as simple paranoia, because every day I'm finding things that are finding things out that are blowing my mind. And so I think we should start believing every little bit of a story. But of course, the one that Sophia just presented comes from partially from this news story that maybe you guys have seen, where Zuckerberg posted a picture at his desk, and it was revealed that he not only hid his camera, but also his microphone on his laptop, which resulted in a lot of articles with titles such as "Mark Zuckerberg covers his laptop camera, you should consider it too," or even "It's not paranoia to cover your laptop's webcam." But one of my favorite interviews was with this artist who got accepted to the same network of residencies that I was doing, so the EMAP one, and he works with a lot of different technologies. So AI, VR, AR, XR, all of these different things. And here's the story that he tells.
Yeah, I think it's a common sense now that we get this personalized ads immediately. Like, what is mostly weird is that, like, before you talk about the thing that you're interested in, even in a table, in a conversation, normally this is the case, right? Like that you say something, you talk about your cat, and then you immediately get the cat ads. But sometimes, and this is only sometimes, you think about something and that shows up there. So I think, and this is very instinctual thinking, like it's very personal, I cannot talk about anyone else, but I think that it captures some kind of like thoughts, not necessarily like verbal, like speech and so on. It can capture some kind of thoughts. So there's kind of like this link.
You think the phones capture brainwaves, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
I mean,
no, I believe you.
I mean it. This is of course some kind of thought that comes to my mind, like that I'm having fun with. Like, oh, does it capture my brainwave activities, or what is it like? But it is true, I'm not joking, it is true that sometimes you think about something and you know that you didn't talk about it anywhere, and you see a very specific ad in front of you?
So the reason why I like this interview, apart from Cenk being incredibly charming, is that this was actually the moment when I realized that it doesn't matter if you work with tech tools, it doesn't matter if you program, if you know how applications work or algorithms, whatever, you still have these kind of ideas about technology that might not necessarily make sense. Or maybe they do, I don't know, I'm not that professional in technology. So these tech lore stories make us feel like we have some kind of agency over our devices that in reality we have lost a long time ago, right? So back when we stopped making our own tech tools, now we don't even make our own web pages because big tech has taken over that. And we're outsourcing it to them, who of course keep their technology super secret because it's their economic model, but they also constantly augment the complexity, so it's becoming harder and harder for us to catch up and to understand what they're doing. And I wanted to show one last clip from this project.
Еще, мне кажется, совет с зубной пастой и вот это, мне кажется, то, что может быть интересно. Зубная паста, нанесение зубной пасты на экран, чтобы, типа, заполнить какие-то царапины.
Что?
Ты никогда не слышала об этом? Я просто реально боюсь, что я, может, придумываю. Мне кажется, я такое делала, серьезно. Вот, типа, ты наносишь зубную пасту, берешь ватный диск и втираешь, как бы. И таким образом заполняешь какие-то микротрещины на экране.
Yeah, and so these videos document how people deal with their techno-anxieties, but they also show kind of alternative ways of repair. So they also kind of share some tips, which is why the project is also called Advice Well Taken. And so far I've only showed you the video part, but this project also exists in the form of a publication, which kind of provides a resume of all the clips and can also serve as a guide to the videos, which in an exhibition setting are shown on a DVD. Since this project is all about agency, I wanted to give agency to the public to choose what clips they want to watch. And also because there are 75 of them, so altogether it makes for 2.5 hours, and that's very boring to watch if you can't click on stuff. And so here's a close-up of one of the spreads. This tech lore seems to be very specific to the Netherlands. I don't know, maybe it also exists in Belgium. I haven't asked yet. But it's a story that apparently everyone in the Netherlands knows, which is that if you look at a screen, whether it's a computer screen or TV, for too long, your eyes will literally become square. So of course, adults don't really believe that, but when you're a child, this is what your parents tell you in order to get you to stop watching TV. And so the person who I interviewed about this story said that she herself felt this actually, because when you look at a TV for too long, you can feel that your eyes are starting to hurt or strain a little bit. And so she was really scared that her eyes will turn square. And it's also really important to mention that the publication, so the graphic design was done by a Thai artist and designer, Supisara Burapachaisi, who did an amazing work. And that in the publication there are 2 texts that are written by guests. So there's one around the questions of repair and maintenance, written by an Irish artist and theoretician, Teresa Dillon, and another one around technological mythologies, which was written by Geert Lovink from the Institute for Network Cultures. And here's how the project has been exhibited in the past. This was during the Impact Festival last year. And now I'm coming to the last project that I want to present to you, and it's directly related to AI. So if you came here for that reason, this is your treat. So the project is called Dasha's Kitchen, My Magical Grilled Cheese Sandwich Recipe. And it's also exhibited here at KIKK in the Galerie du Beffroi. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go. And before I talk about the project itself, I think it's important to kind of note the context out of which the project was born. So on May 19th, 2023, the French government passed this law, which is regarding the different measures that needed to be taken in order to make sure that the Olympic and Paralympic Games, which happened this summer, go smoothly. And in this law, you can find all sorts of information about stores needing to remain open on Sundays for the tourists, about doping measures for the athletes, and also about this handy new security measure called algorithmic video surveillance. It can also be called intelligent video surveillance or augmented video surveillance. And I found out about this law pretty late. I mean, after it was already passed, so, couldn't do anything about it. But basically, I was invited to be part of an exhibition dedicated to the Olympic Games, and I didn't really know what to do because now you guys know my work and you know that I don't really work on sports. So I figured, okay, surveillance is a topic that I'm interested in. I found this law and I said, bingo, I'm going to make a project about this. So I started doing some research about it, and of course, one of the first things that you find out when you do research about surveillance is this guy, Alphonse Bertillon, who is a French criminologist, and he is famous for creating the mugshot, which he also very proudly uses as his self-portrait. And on the left, he also created this kind of wicked-looking IKEA pamphlet, which is actually a way to identify if an offender is a reoffender. So back in the day, of course, they didn't have technology, so what they did is actually measured every single part of a human's body, and then when you came to the police, they basically looked at all the records to make sure that you haven't already done something in the past. But the reason why Alphonse Bertillon was so interesting to me is because some people consider him to be the father of biometric identification. Obviously, having known all this, it makes sense why. And biometric data seems to be kind of the main discussion around this algorithmic video surveillance law, because under the GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU countries are not allowed to store or share or do anything really with biometric data. So the French government assured us that they won't be using biometrics in their surveillance. Meanwhile, a French activist group specialized in privacy and security called La Quadrature du Net talk about the fact that actually it's been years that the French government has been trying to change the meaning of biometrics altogether in order to signify a very specific kind of identification, such as fingerprint identification or iris scans. And I remember reading this and thinking, yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. But actually, biometric data means personal data related to physical, physiological, or behavioral characteristics, which offer the possibility of identifying you as you, which is actually a super vast definition. I mean, by this definition, the way you walk is also biometric data, because we can pretty accurately identify that you are who you are just based on the way you walk. And so what the algorithmic video surveillance offers us is a surveillance where algorithms, of course, will analyze video streams in order to find what they've been calling abnormal activity. And then they have to report it to a human. And I imagine that the only reason that a human is even kept in the chain here is because this is all part of the new AI Act law that the European Union is passing next year, I believe, that says that algorithms cannot make decisions autonomously. And even that, I'm assuming, is just the aftermath of the child care benefits scandal in the Netherlands, which happened a few years ago. If you've never heard of it, please look it up. It's another reason not to trust AI. And some of the examples of this abnormal behavior are here in French, but I will name a few. So abandoned objects, presence of a firearm, crowd movements, and so on. And to give you an idea of the changes that are taking place due to this new surveillance, is that up until now, video surveillance generally looks like this. So you have urban supervision centers where you have policemen or guards sitting and looking at a bunch of screens at the same time, and they're supposed to find something wrong. So of course, as the number of surveillance cameras in cities keeps getting higher and higher, the number of screens is also getting larger and larger, and then it's becoming harder and harder for these security guards to find something wrong. So yeah, it turns out they're not doing really well at their job, or so they claim. I mean, not they are very proud of what they're doing, but the government claims they're not doing well enough. And so basically what the French government has decided is that instead of kind of removing some of these cameras, because of course this would also be admitting that this move to install more cameras was not the right choice to begin with, instead, they decided to implement algorithms in order to do that work for the humans. So what's going to happen now is you have one guard that's sitting in front of one screen that is black most of the time, and whenever an algorithm finds something wrong, then it will bring up this image on the screen, and the guard all of a sudden has to really quickly basically make a snap decision about what to do with this accident. The problems here are so many, starting from the fact that it's private tech startups that are kind of providing these tools, and they also are the ones who get to decide what is considered abnormal. So there was one actually example of of one startup called 22, which is providing some of this technology, that said, actually, we are not going to detect humans that are on the ground because this could be a homeless person and we don't want to detect that. What we will detect, though, is a person on the ground following a fall, because this might mean that somebody injured themselves or there was an accident. And this is actually, this is a position they were able to take, and the government could do nothing about it because they don't have this technology themselves. On top of that, these private startups are getting all of this information for free, right? So, of course, we all keep hearing that data is money, data is the new oil, and now they're getting all of this data for free from the French government. And of course, another very important thing to mention here is that we are much more likely to trust an algorithm that tells us that something is wrong, especially when we have to make a really quick decision, because we perceive algorithms as not being able to make a mistake, something I already mentioned at the beginning. And so I didn't want this project to be just about surveillance. So after rejecting for a long time doing any kind of work related to artificial intelligence, I thought that here, it's unavoidable, so I might as well include some of the other things that I find problematic with AI in this project. But the thing is that, I find so many things wrong that it was kind of hard to figure out where to start or what to focus on. And so for this research, I decided to focus on something called photomation by Astra Taylor, a term that I really like, because it basically describes all of the human labor that is hidden behind algorithms. And I like it because it kind of describes really well any work that is supposed to be automated but is actually done by humans in order to promote this idea of obsolescence of human workers, which is also very often done through using the language of magic. And we find this language in Arthur C. Clarke's books, where he says that any sufficiently technology is indistinguishable from magic, but also in texts that try to promote this algorithmic video surveillance. So here we have the director of the company that I mentioned earlier, so that specializes in kind of computer vision, that tells us that the magic of computer vision is that it is infinite, and the limit is just your imagination, basically. But the reality is that saying that something is magical or magically produced hides the costs of its production while reinforcing the image of an extremely complex and obfuscated technology that is kind of operating like a black box mechanism that is beyond our understanding, which Alfred Gell actually was already arguing back in 1988 in his article titled Technology and Magic. It's very good. But basically, let's get back to the grilled cheese sandwich. You might have already forgot that this is how this project started. And you might be also wondering how I ended up with making grilled cheese sandwiches while talking about algorithmic video surveillance. So at some point, I ended up reading so many technical papers and laws and all these different things that I ended up getting kind of lost and thinking, how am I actually going to translate this to the public? I try to do things with humor very often, but this is a very serious subject, so I didn't really know how to approach it. And then I decided to kind of go backwards and look at how do people actually explain what is an algorithm. So at a very basic level, if you know nothing about technology, how would we explain to you what an algorithm is? And then I found multiple videos that actually explain that an algorithm is like a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich. So, oops, oh my God, I'm running out of time. So here's one example of this.
It's just a set of instructions. It's just like a recipe. A more complicated algorithm, called a machine learning algorithm, can help artificial intelligence learn through identifying patterns and considering the results of previous experiences.
So this is one example of which there were many. So then it kind of became clear to me what I needed to do. I came up with this strange idea of making a video that starts out as a tutorial for a grilled cheese sandwich, but then becomes a loop of reaction videos, of which you see so many on YouTube, which with each video kind of get further and further away from a simple tutorial and get more and more into a discussion of artificial intelligence and surveillance. The video is 15 minutes, so I'm not going to show the whole thing here. I'm going to show a selection of clips that I will probably even have to end early. But please go watch it. It's on the Galerie du Beffroi if you want to see the whole thing.
Hey everyone!
everybody, it's Dasha from Dasha's Kitchen, and today I'm going to show you how to make the ultimate grilled cheese sandwich. To make a great grilled cheese sandwich, you can use almost any kind of bread, but my personal favorite is this kind of soft but structured bread because it's a bit of a sweeter sliced bread. When you notice the bread is lightly browned on one side, close your sandwich and flip it over. Continue cooking until the bread is a rich golden brown, flipping once in between. Dasha's Kitchen – очень успешный кулинарный канал с тысячами подписчиков и самыми простыми рецептами. Но даже если она показывает самые простые рецепты для самых простых блюд, это не важно. Она умудряется испортить все. You don't have to wait until your pan is hot. Кстати, а знаете, мне кто-то недавно сказал, что искусственный интеллект – это как рецепт для сэндвича с плавленным сыром. Я знаю, что звучит это как бы странно, но я абсолютно не шучу. Golden brown and crispy edge. Vous étiez nombreux à me demander de critiquer la vidéo virale de cette influenceuse russe qui parle des algorithmes comme des sandwichs au grilled cheese. Aujourd'hui, je vais donc démonter quelques mythes de cette vidéo et parler de l'IA de manière plus concrète en prenant un exemple que nous avons ici en France. Mais je me dis que c'est peut-être pas si random comme elle le dit qu'elle aborde cette question parce que un peu plus loin dans la vidéo, il y a une pub sponsorisée et cette pub est payée par une entreprise qui s'appelle Falias. Mais c'est comme par hasard une entreprise qui a beaucoup de solutions algorithmiques, notamment dans tout ce qui a un lien avec les mesures sécuritaires. Okay, I will stop it here. You can watch the whole thing in the gallery, or you can also watch it on my website. And to finish up on an expected yet sad note, one thing that I did not mention during the presentation is that despite the fact that this surveillance was supposed to be to kind of keep people safe during the Olympics, the law actually allowed for the experimentation of this technology all the way until March of 2025. To remind you, the games ended in September. So a month ago, I read this article saying that the Parisian police chief is in favor of extending the use of algorithmic video surveillance. And in general, because nothing happened during the Olympics, I think the police are getting a nice bonus. So, of course, this technology is likely now to be permanent. And on this note, I will say thank you.